welcome back to the Armchair Coaching Podcast. My name is Coach Sheffer, and we've got another great episode. Today we've got our college football playoff reaction special episode. Unfortunately, Coach Banstra could not join us today. He's doing God knows what in Texas right now. But we do have Coach Heath back with us finally. Hopefully we're going to get you back for a couple more program profile episodes here in the future. So, Coach Heath, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Coach James Heath, currently a free agent football coach, and right now I'm working as the voice of the Archbishop Hoban Knights for basketball, and I'm glad to be here. Also, glad to announce I am cancer-free. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. You know, it's a lot of fun. And, you know, I'm going to look forward to being able to hopefully be more involved. So health is good. Some things aren't so good. We'll talk about that, of course. But, yeah.
Well, congratulations, Coach.
Thanks.
Glad to hear that you're doing a lot better.
Yeah.
All right. And Coach Steve.
I'm Coach Steve. I'm the offensive line coach and run game coordinator at Addison Trail High School. It's a western suburb of Chicago. On podcast and YouTube, the Coach Steve Show, where we can't curse all we want because I don't care.
Oh, the inside joke about that for the listeners is that that Coach Sheffer likes to keep his job, and some of his coworkers may or may not listen to this show. But Coach Bennett, could you introduce yourself?
I'm Mathew Bennett. I'm the co-OC and OL coach at Clinton High School in Clinton, South Carolina. Glad to be here and glad to hear Coach Heath's health was picked up and turned around. Although that will not impact at all the things I say about Ohio State tonight. Brought to you live from a state where a football team has never lost to the Ohio State University.
That's you telling me South Carolina hasn't played Ohio State?
Do what?
Has South Carolina ever played Ohio State?
Yes. What? Let's not talk about that either. That state is not good for the Buckeyes. It's not. It's just not. Let's not talk about that.
All
South
right.
Carolina is great. It's great for us all to invade, as you know. But when it comes to football, that's not good. That's not a good mix. Ohio and South Carolina, not good.
Gets a little bit more real once you get down past Maryland.
Yeah,
it does.
Well, I mean, maybe a little bit past Virginia too. Not really a whole lot of good Virginia teams right now, except for Liberty, which I have my own thoughts about Liberty. But you know, we might not. That might be another episode that we'll have to talk about. All right, so a couple of topics for tonight. We are going to be talking a lot about the college football playoff. We're going to talk about our thoughts about the top 4 teams. We'll probably sneak in some conversation about the teams that just didn't quite make it this year. We'll talk about our predictions for the semifinal games. Maybe we'll even get into who we think is going to win the whole thing this year. Thoughts on changing the playoffs a little bit, maybe having some ideas on a little bit of better system for choosing the national champion. And then we're going to talk about bowls. Although one topic I kind of want to just talk about it right now because I was super pissed off all day until about 10 minutes before we started recording when I saw they actually have a bowl game now. Yes. The whole situation with Army, I think I was pissed off for how many days? Like 2 days? Because we didn't know if they were going to get a bowl game or not. And luckily, we were able to get some news that they are going to be playing in the Liberty Bowl versus West Virginia on December 31st. And it's a good thing we got that in now because we are recording on Monday, and this one is probably going to be released on a Friday. So we would have looked a little bit dumb if we were still angry a couple days later. But what are your guys' thoughts about the whole Army situation?
It was wrong. It was flat out wrong. Multiple reasons, and I'm sure we're all going to agree. You have a, correct me if I'm wrong, 9-2 record.
Mm-hmm.
9-2. And you look at the schedule that they played, it's a good schedule. It's a solid schedule. So, to leave out a 9-2 team, and plus, it is a military academy. To me, why would you not want to take Army? Why would you not want to be the bowl that stepped out and said, yeah, we're going to welcome you with open arms because you had a great season, plus you're serving our country. That's a problem to me. It's a real problem. And again, it comes down to, and I'm sure we'll get into this more. To me, it's greed. It's greed because they really are looking at, well, what does West Point have to offer us? Well, how about what you have to offer them, which is an opportunity for those guys to be rewarded for a great season. And I'm glad that it's against West Virginia too, which is, it's great. It's great. It's, thank God for the Liberty Bowl of all bowls to step up and do the right thing.
So just in case the listeners don't know what was going on, Army originally, they were slated to play it was the Independence Bowl, correct? I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
And the Independence Bowl was canceled, but the problem was all of the other bowls were already full because they all had contracts with a certain conference and they couldn't take another team, and so they had to take on teams that had not so great records for this season. And so, for example, Tennessee, how many games did they win? 2, 3 this year? Really not looking like a good team right now. They had a bowl game, and luckily they were originally slated for the Liberty Bowl, but they backed out because of COVID issues. And so now Army's going to take over that bowl game. And honestly, I put a tweet out saying that this whole situation is just another example that listen, like Coach Bennett said before we started talking, I love watching bowl games. I loved I used to print out a sheet of paper and I would have a competition with my siblings, and we'd all do a pick 'em and see like who had the most wins at the end of the bowl season, and that was pretty fun. And but I mean, this system that we have right now that you have a playoff, I'll put it in quotes, playoff, which is more like an invitational. And if you don't make it in, those bowl games don't. Honestly, what do they really mean? You got players opting out. A couple years ago, who was it? It was like Christian McCaffrey opted out of their bowl game, and those are the players that you go to watch, right? And I understand there's always the conversation that people say, that you got these smaller teams, they go to bowl game and they win, like last year at Kent State. Not a lot of success in Kent State history. They go and then they win their first bowl game ever last year. And they were all celebrating. Yeah, they had fun. They had a great time. They got the extra practice. But what do those bowls really mean anymore? We can always have a conversation about that. But I personally think the bowl system needs to die off. The system we have right now needs to die, and we need to fix it with something else. That's just me. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox here. We need the top 4. So unless you've been living under a rock, you should know this by now. But the top 4 teams that have been selected for the college football playoff: number 1, Alabama; number 2, Clemson; number 3, the Ohio State; and number 4, Notre Dame. So the couple teams that seemed to be left out: Texas A&M, Cincinnati. Weirdly, Oklahoma was highly ranked again after losing to Kansas State and Iowa State earlier this year. But those are their top 4 teams. So why don't we cover them from number 1 to number 4, Alabama. Any thoughts on Alabama being in the college football playoff?
That was a lock. That was a lock from the beginning. They did everything right. If there is a program that, and there's only really 2 that come to mind, Alabama being one of them, that did everything right. I mean, they were able to push through. Saban had COVID twice. they didn't miss a beat.
Kick its ass.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, would you expect anything else from St. Nick? Probably not. He's, that's a machine there. And you fully expected it after what happened last year, them to bounce back and, to do things that they did this year, even with some critical, injuries to a couple dudes. I mean, it was a lock. They did everything right. All they had to do was take care of business against Florida. That was not a problem. To tell you the truth, even if they would have lost that game, they still make it because so that's not a surprise.
Coach
Yeah, all Alabama did by beating Florida was save us from having to hear about Florida getting in.
Yeah.
Amen.
If you beat Alabama, you're probably in. I mean, the SEC,
if that player from Florida had not thrown that shoe, and everyone on here knows what I'm talking about, that darn shoe.
The shoe.
Would they have had a little bit more momentum and maybe been able to possibly beat Alabama? Or
I actually think because they threw the shoe and lost as 24-point favorites at home, I think they were a little extra motivated and played over their heads against Alabama. I think if he doesn't throw the shoe, Alabama kicks the piss out of him. I cleaned that up good. I had a lot going there.
Coach Steve, what are your thoughts on Alabama? Because I know you like Alabama.
Oh, Coach Saban. I love Coach Saban. I hate running the football, and I hate defense, but I love Coach Saban.
That's it. That's all I have to say. No, I mean, what's interesting is when you heard Alabama, you thought defense. Now when you hear Alabama, I think offense. They're putting up 50 points a game. Sarkisian's dialing it up, and they're getting creative. And, if they'll run the ball first quarter, then the next quarter, we're going to pass it a little bit now. We don't want to run it no more, and then they'll go back to it. So the only team that can keep up with them, I think, will be Clemson. I mean, we'll get to that. I think that's the only team that's going to keep up. And that game will be who flinches first. And so far, Alabama hasn't flinched. They were pissed off last year because they had to play Michigan, and no one gives a rat's ass bowl game last year, and they're mad. They're trying to prove something. So it's no shocker they're number one.
Well, I think I mentioned it in the LSU episode. The only thing that LSU did for college football this year was piss off Alabama and Clemson. That's all they did. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is playing lights out. Alabama's playing – the whole team is playing lights out. Well, defense maybe not so much. How many points did Alabama defense give up to Ole Miss?
A lot.
It was a lot.
But what you're seeing is Alabama's strength and conditioning is more about speed, and they're not all about, filling the sleeves out. They're more about generating power and getting faster and all that stuff you're seeing now, and that's why you're seeing they give up all those points to Ole Miss. But as the season goes along with this new conditioning that they're doing, and Indiana's doing it, they're getting more powerful as the year goes on. So you're seeing that offensive line blow people off the ball. Now they're good, but all that's generating all that power to push them off the ball. You're seeing their wide receivers run faster. You're seeing them blow by people, and it's going as the season goes along. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing Indiana they're incorporating the same thing, and that's happening with them. So you're going to see strength and conditioning programs, I think, churn. Ohio State does it too. They've done it for a couple. You're going to start to see them start to do that type of stuff. I hope Illinois turns to that because they're just trying to be big. Well, it's not about that anymore. It's about lifting to generate power quickly and speed. And so that's why Alabama is just continuing to go on and on because of the strength and conditioning coaches that they brought in.
You heard it here first. Heard it here first, coaches and fans. Coach Steve has broken the news. Alabama runs sprints and works hip flexors, unlike any other college program on the face of the planet. Revolutionary.
I mean, they're not about. But look at a lot of the old school stuff. What they're doing is different. It's just different. They're not worried about, you squatted 600 pounds. They don't care. They're more about they sprint. They go out dead sprints out on Wednesday and don't do nothing on Thursdays and Fridays. They don't do nothing. They recover. They sit down. They don't do nothing. It's not the old school thinking like when we played where we ran gassers.
Is that what
he was? They don't do that anymore.
Is that what Nick was alluding to a couple of weeks ago when he talked about they don't have as many soft tissue injuries and things? I know it was a dig at the former strength and conditioning, but I know that they went wholesale like in a different direction. I'm going to guess that's really what he was alluding to in all that.
Because some of the strength and conditioning coaches from Indiana came to Alabama and some stayed at Indiana. So they're incorporating the same thing. And then Ohio State talked about how that's kind of what they've been doing. And then they've all met. And because Coach Tony Holler, he's a track coach up here in Illinois. He's done that stuff in track. There's a Coach Dixon who's on Twitter. He's been doing that in Illinois. My buddy who coaches down in Central Illinois, he's incorporated, talked about how his kids went from running like 18 miles per hour, now they're up to 20, 21 miles per hour. And they're girls, like he's able to do that. And he's like, you would come to a practice and think we were wusses because after we sprint, we sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, literally just sit there. And it's about recovery. It's about this. It's about, we don't worry about filling the sleeves out and doing curls for the girls. We're more about generating power than anything else and worried about, we don't care if you squat 600 pounds, you squat 400 pounds. If you could do it a lot of times, generate some power, some movement, that's what they're doing. And it's keeping them fresh. And as the year goes on, they get more powerful.
Basically what Steve is saying is every other program's walking around wearing the half shirts, pick heavyweight up, put heavyweight down. Alabama's running sprints, doing stretches.
I sort of sounded smart there, didn't I? I was trying really hard. You could see I was focusing on that. I was like, let me not sound like an idiot today.
Coach Bennett had to dumb it down for some other people.
Mine was dumbing it down. I don't know how much dumber I could get with it.
Sheffer tried really hard to not say dumb it down for some of our southern listeners. I know what he did. I know what he's trying to do.
I had to deflect
It's all
myself.
right.
I almost said it. I had to deflect myself.
Hey, but you know what? They had football and we haven't, so something smarter down there than what's going on up here.
And technically Virginia's part of the South, but we haven't had football either. And we
What's
might
wrong
not.
with you? You're not South. You're not Central. What's going on with you?
Y'all been exiled.
Mm-hmm. We're our own place now. Yeah, I had heard. I've read some stuff on that style of strength and conditioning before, and it's been intriguing. It's definitely different because it's not what I'm used to. But I can see the evidence that it seems to be working, less tissue injuries, and I definitely understand the getting the rest. It's just different. I think it'll take some time for that to catch on. But now that it's now that it's at Alabama, it'll probably catch a little bit faster. Because whatever they do at Alabama, people are going to want to do it.
People made fun of Christian McCaffrey whenever he talked about actually doing that, and then had a big season, and then of course then there's this year. So I think the jury's still out. I think there's still going to be people that are going to question it simply because we're so you're right. We're so used to the culture of football is I'm going to pick weight up and put it down, and so it's not going to catch on. Even I think with Bama, I don't know if that really like pushes it. Of course, there are people who who go and just go ahead and go into it just because that's what they do. But I think it's hard to change culture and get people to take a track mindset with football. So.
And like Indiana, they were explosive with Ohio State, and so like you're going to see it with them. And I think and then it's Ohio State, Indiana, Alabama. Clemson looks like they're starting to use it because they look like as the season goes on, they're getting powerful. So it's like it may turn into people using this track mindset. Like we're still going to lift weights, but it's not about this one rep max anymore. It's not about like when we killed our backs doing squats and deadlifts and stuff. It's not about that anymore. It's about catering to the position of what they play and consider. And like, because like, does it make any sense to the linemen do certain things that a wide receiver should be doing? No, you need to tailor it to that. So Nick Saban has adapted his offense and defense. He knows he can't stop people no more. He just has to slow them down. He knows that. He knows that they have to play longer in the season all the time. And so you saw that from Ole Miss. You watch that Ole Miss game, they didn't look like they had power because they were getting up all these points. Now it looks a little different. even though they're giving up some points, they're still playing very fast, and they don't look tired.
Mhm.
So it works.
Yeah,
It's showing that it works.
Yeah, and it was strange to hear Nick Saban actually admit that the game has changed to where it's an offensive game. You know, and speaking to what you're saying, Steve, and he went and said the game has changed. We're no longer being able to just focus on shutting them down defensively. You have to have a great offense and score points to win, because that's the way that that's where the game is heading. You're, so many athletes out there, and in some ways, I guess it doesn't surprise me. He's getting great athletes there. Indiana, I know that's been, you mentioned them. That's part of their movement is, in recruiting. More athletes, more speed. Speed is more important than size and strength in a lot of ways for them. And Bama's kind of always been ahead. I mean, they get the dudes anyway. So that's even scarier. But to kind of get back to the point, I mean, Bama went, next man up with some situation. It'll be interesting to see what happens with, losing a major part of their success and with a lineman. I know they went and took care of business against Florida, but that'll be interesting to see. But no matter what, they deserve to be the number one team. They proved it all season long with how they battled against opponents, and then the other opponent, COVID, keeping things moving. So it's no surprise to me that they were the number one. They deserved it.
Yeah. So, do you guys think that this year's Alabama quarterback, he looks pretty good? Is he better than the past couple quarterbacks they've had? Because I feel like they've been a little bit better this year on offense, a little bit more balanced this year than they have in the past. That's just my perspective. What do you guys think you're seeing?
I think them having a dominant quarterback's severely overrated. How many games did Greg McElroy lose?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
All you got to be at Alabama, and they got tremendous receivers. I think if you're going to make a point for, skill players in general, I think you can make a strong point that now that the Waddle kid's hurt, Mac Jones is probably the third best skill player on offense. So if the Waddle kid was still in, he'd be the fourth. He does a great job, but Alabama's got one less national championship than they should have because they lost to Ohio State because they wouldn't turn around and hand the ball off. And I still hate Lane Kiffin for that. But handing it to Najee Harris, who seems like he's been at Alabama for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
and getting the ball to is it Walker? Is that the stud receiver? Is that his last name?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Anyway, not Waddle, but the other one.
Mm-hmm.
They've got so many. I think Mac Jones.
If Banster was on, he'd be on the computer looking it up right now for you.
Yeah, he's the secretary, but they're phenomenal, man. They're a phenomenal football team, but them having a stud 5-star quarterback is overrated.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a program in the country that don't need one, it's them. And they were more dominant when they didn't have one. Now it's people catching up, but they don't need one.
This is probably the best overall offensive group Nick Saban's had at one time, I think. Wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. He's always had a piece here and there, and they've still won. Now he has it all together. These wide receivers, running backs. And
4 or 5 NFL offensive linemen and Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram in the same backfield. This is the best group to run mesh with.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, this is the first time where he's now got, like, this group of wide receivers that's been the best at one time. He's got the offensive line and running. Like, it's all together now. He's had, like, either really good linemen and running backs or really good wide receivers. And I think this is the first time they've had this group that's all there at one time. And you got a wing T quarterback chucking the ball around, I'm just saying. But Sarkisian dials up some things. They keep tight ends into block for him to give him more time. Like, they're dialing things up. And the thing is, they'll keep their tight ends to block, and the wide receivers get open still. They only have 2 guys going on, and they get open. And when you have a lineman that's
very good. Sark's very, very good.
Did you see the tight end? The tight end take the snap.
He doesn't outthink himself either. If it's 3rd and 1 and they need it, they hand it to Harris. That's where he seems to me like a better play caller than Lane was. The Lane train when he was there, even though Lane Kiffin may be a little bit more creative. Lane Kiffin might be a little bit more ahead of his time because, man, he does some great stuff. But he outthink himself, whereas Sark, when it's, like I say, it's 3rd and a foot, he's not going to throw the double reverse pass. He's going to hand the ball to Harris and say, here, you 5 future 10-year pros get a push, and we'll get the foot and we'll go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
he doesn't pull a Ryan Day and force some things that he shouldn't do.
We'll get to Ryan Day here in a little bit, but
already starting.
Before
already starting.
So let's move on to number 2, Clemson, and I know we've got thoughts on Clemson, but except for that one loss, their only loss was to Notre Dame. But that was when they were down on defense and they were missing their star quarterback and a couple other players too, if I remember correctly that game. And Notre Dame played well. I mean, they did. I thought both teams played well, and it came close. But number 2 Clemson came back last weekend and showed them what Trevor Lawrence can do and showed them what a full-on defense can do. Like Coach Bennett said, what all 11 starters on defense can do with a pissed-off Brent Venables. And they just took it to Notre Dame. Notre Dame didn't stand a chance in that game at all.
Ian Book couldn't get, on a 3-step drop, couldn't get his 3rd step in the ground. He was running.
I mean, the score doesn't look as bad as what it looked like watching it on the field.
The actuality of watching it play by play, golly. I mean, it was, and as the resident Clemson guy, I stress this. I am biased. I've been a Clemson fan my whole life. I've got baby pictures in Clemson stuff. I've been there through the worst of the worst, losing to the team in Columbia 5 years in a row. When a 7-win season was a good year. I mean, I've been there. And now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Clemson does. When they could win 7 championships in a row, which is not likely to happen because there's so many other great programs, but they could do that, and we're still not. I mean, we don't get viewed in the same light as the other 3 teams in the playoff, and I think that is something that Coach Sweeney does a phenomenal job of using to his advantage, because those kids play hard, and you could tell that losing to Notre Dame and some things that got said by Notre Dame players, and you could tell it eat at them, and they played like their hair was on fire. I look forward to seeing them play against Ohio State, and I think it'll be interesting. It's always good because Ryan Day is such a good. I mean, I love to study, go back and study Ryan Day's stuff in the off season because he does a great job of formationing people and getting you where he wants you, and then you got the Mad Hatter on defense for Clemson. That it's a chess match. I think Clemson's got a few better pieces, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. And offensively, I mean, if Trevor Lawrence don't win the Heisman, then he stop giving it away.
Yeah, Heisman Trophy. They don't like Stanford running backs, and they don't like Clemson quarterbacks.
They should give it to Trevor Lawrence and say, "We're doing this because of what we did to Deshaun Watson," which is the biggest heist in Heisman history. But that's we could do a whole podcast on how I think Clemson's been underhanded and screwed by the media and the voters. I mean, look at all the defensive players that Clemson's had. How many linebackers of the year they had? How many defensive linemen of the year they had? You know, all that stuff. The one that like pops in my head, I think Mackenzie Alexander might have won the Thorpe Award one year. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Clemson doesn't win national awards. Even when you play a team like Alabama and you catch them, like we called them last time, don't matter. You know,
Coach
it is
Steve,
what it is. They'll probably find a way to give the Heisman Trophy to somebody from Ohio State because they got so many of them. Played 4 games, three of them Little League Jamborees, and they'll find a way to slip them in there. Or give it to another. Alabama had never won a Heisman Trophy until Mark Ingram won one, and now them jokers get it. I mean, they got a standing appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Ryan Day?
Yep.
It is. He's peeking over my shoulder.
There's his boss. There's his papa. Back here eating some Papa John's.
Still got Coach Steve over here with the Oklahoma flag. But Coach Steve, what are your thoughts on Clemson there?
Oh, before Coach Steve gets going, I also want to give a special shout out to not Ben Batson, his dad, Joey Batson and the Clemson strength staff for all the speed work apparently they're not doing, according to Steve.
I said they were doing it.
Fast. All they do is grunt and spit and, ooh, I picked up heavy weight because only Alabama does speed stuff.
I said Clemson was doing it. Look how fast they are. I knew I should have said nothing. I just learned a lot. I was very excited to share it out of what's going on. What was the question again? No, now you got me. What was the question again?
Your initial thoughts on Clemson being number 2?
They deserve to be number 2. It was going to be Alabama and Clemson. There was no doubt. Even when they lost Notre Dame, it still was like they're still probably the second best team in the country. Even though I'm going to play the other side of the coin here, I know Notre Dame won, but that quarterback for Clemson put up just as big numbers as Lawrence did. I just think Notre Dame actually tried. Like I didn't say they didn't try. They just came out with some confidence. Like they're like, this is it. We got to win. And then I think they just didn't adjust the last time. And we talked about before we recorded, like you saw how they played Ian Book this time. They had their defensive lineman read what was going on, not rush up the field. They weren't going to they want to make him in the pocket. If he gets out of the pocket, he's going to destroy you. If he stays in the pocket, he's flustered. And if you can stop the run and you're able to do that, which Clemson can do, and they adjusted, it was perfect. Notre Dame didn't adjust. But I still give Notre Dame credit for that win against Clemson. I mean, it's still Clemson. They still, I think it was play calling in that overtime. Like, they tried to do too much with him at the very end for Clemson. But, I mean, I'm not shocked they're number 2. It's going to be them and Alabama again. And I just talked to a friend. They're like, is this bad for college football? And I said, no, someone's got to beat them. Like, you say it's bad, but somebody better beat them. Like, Notre Dame should have beat them, and then we went and had this conversation. But, to be the man, you got to beat the man, and nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you tune in to watch. So you talk about college football, everybody tunes in to watch.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Coach Heath?
I said earlier, I felt like 2 programs did everything right. I should have said 3. However, I'll tell you why. Ohio State was one that I wouldn't necessarily say. And I think there's an asterisk onto that. I think that Clemson did the right thing this year, though. And I think they're better for playing without Trevor for a while. That team took care of their business after they got beat. Mm-hmm. And is Notre Dame a good team? I'll save that. The bottom line is the best quarterback in the entire nation is who Clemson has. They have a huge advantage of that way. They did everything right in my eyes. We can talk about conferences and whatever. I don't really want to get into that. They're the second best team on paper. Now, notice I'm saying on paper. But that team could have been one. In all reality, I think they're 2 simply because of what Coach Bennett said. There is this disrespect that goes towards Clemson, which I don't know why we haven't gotten past that yet. I really don't, because they're a major player at the table. If they're not at the head of the table, then I don't know who is. And it's not hard for me to say because that's fact. That's fact. They absolutely deserve to be in one of those top 2 spots. They did everything right for the entire season. They get tripped up by Notre Dame. So what? They're still, right now on paper, they're 1 or 2 in my mind. So, yes, they deserve to be there.
Yeah. I think they're a team right now. Them and Alabama. I mean, Ohio State's a great team, but unfortunately, Coach Heath right now. In some of the past episodes, I've talked about a rating system, like give a team a grade, right? And I said A+ is like the elite program of college football, and I said, and there are 2 who are the standard right now, and those 2 are Alabama and Clemson. Right now, they are the standard, and everyone else is chasing them. Ohio State is right there, though. They're very close. The last couple of years, they just haven't been able to break that layer yet. The thing that I see when I watch an Alabama or a Clemson play is, and this is coming from a Texas fan, one of the things that I hate watching about Texas is they play to the same level as their competition. When they play at Georgia, they come out and play like they're all 5 stars, right? But when they come out and they play Kansas, they all look like they're 1-star team. Like, what the heck is going on? They don't play to a standard. Alabama, if it's an Alabama team, it doesn't give a shit if they're playing anybody else. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It could be Western Carolina, and they're going to come out and play Alabama standard football. It doesn't matter. Clemson, it doesn't matter who they play. They could be playing the Citadel. They're coming out. And, no offense to the Citadel. I enjoyed watching the Citadel. But they're coming out. They're playing Clemson standard football. I mean, and thank you, Clemson. And this is coming from all the triple option fans out there. Thank you for the Georgia Tech game this year. For playing to a freaking standard and scoring 7. How many points they score? 70 something? 76?
As many as they wanted.
I mean, they could have gone 80.
Lawrence's arm got tired. That's how many they scored.
Yeah, and they scored most of those.
I don't know if it's because Coach Sweeney liked Paul Johnson or what it is, but he don't like the capri pants guy down there in Atlanta. He don't like him at all.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, but thank you, Clemson, for that, from all us triple option fans. Any other thoughts on Clemson? I mean, their defense is awesome. They're great to watch. As a former defensive coach myself, I can appreciate them. Venables will get a head job one day.
I don't know if he wants one, though.
I
don't know if he wants one, though, because there was a report that he's happy. He cannot say he's really happy on what he's doing. So I don't know if
his kids are there playing, and he won't leave till at least they're gone. He's not going to leave while they're still playing and make them transfer and all that stuff. And he's definitely not – because if he goes somewhere, he's going somewhere to be on that level with Clemson immediately, and he don't want to coach against them.
Texas will take him.
Yeah.
No, they will not.
There's lots of problems with Texas. We're not going to get into that this episode.
It always turns into a Texas podcast.
Or a BYU, or
they should have waited. They should have waited. They could have got Gus.
We should be talking about Coastal tonight. They deserve to be in the playoff more than the next team.
Well, I think we will talk about them when we get to our how do we fix the playoff system. Let's finish up here. Not finishing up. We're still on number 3. I will let Coach Heath lead us on this one as our resident Ohio State fan. You said you had some comments about Ohio State that you wanted us to hear. So Thoughts on Ohio State at number 3?
This is a tough one. It really is. Because you got to talk about which Ohio State did the committee look at? That's what I want to know. Which Ohio State did they look at? Did they look at the one that was pushed by Indiana at pretty much full strength? And we can debate about, Indiana was the toughest opponent the Buckeyes saw all year. Everyone else, no. Pretenders. The powerhouse teams, no. Coach Bennett and I have had this conversation about, how I have to talk about certain matchups because Ohio State has to be propped up. The conference was awful this year. Awful. People don't talk about Iowa, but Iowa was one of the better teams in the conference, in the Big Ten Conference this year. Northwestern was just that much better. And that's why you saw, Patty Fitz with his boys out there in Indy against a Buckeye team that was down, I think, 22 players. And here's where it gets complicated because if you're looking at the squad that had those matchups and was dominant, great. But that's not the team that may walk out there against Clemson. And that's a problem for me. Because if we're going to talk about for the sake of college football, it's a big problem if you're going to say that Chris Olave, Baron Browning, and yes, I know he's a punter, but Drew Chrisman is important to what they do in special teams. Talking about 3 major players, and then you got some other players who can miss. The committee got talked into this, or something's real fishy here. To me, they got talked into this, putting Ohio State at 3. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with ratings. But if you're going to ask me about Ohio State, do they deserve to be the 3? No. Not if they're going to march out with a team like what they played Northwestern with. That game was awful. It was garbage. Coach Ben and I were texting back and forth. And, he's trying to get under my skin, and I'm just like, man, I got nothing to say. What am I supposed to say other than facts? There's 2 different Ohio State teams. There's the dominant, and then there's the one that's been torn apart by COVID protocol. And I don't care. Here's the thing. Ryan Day's even come out and said there are a certain number of those 22, of course he's not naming names, that are going to be able to play. Some are on the fence and might not, especially because they were pushing for 14 instead of the 17 that they got. So some of those guys are going to miss, and we probably won't know that until we get much, much closer. Mm-hmm. But Ohio State shouldn't have been a number 3. To tell you the truth, I don't even know if they should have been if they're even good enough for number 4. It all depends on who is on that roster for that game. And it's going to get ugly. It's going to take, and we can talk about what it's going to take later, and I'll save that. But it hurts to say it, but the truth of the matter is there's a whole lot of things against them. Whole lot of things against them. What will we go, Coach Bennett? 0-6? Actually,
be 0-5, I think.
0-5. Well, here's the thing. Then we go 0 for the state of South Carolina because we talked about, I think maybe it was obvious. We're 0 for the state of South Carolina, so it is what it is. But the bottom line is there's 2 different Buckeye teams. And the one that we're going to see against Clemson, it ain't good. It ain't as good as what they sold to the committee. So whoever is in there is a master salesman. He needs to quit college football and get into sales.
Yeah.
I know, Coach. I see you. And that's how many people are going to feel because they got the stupid Buckeye colored glasses, the scarlet glasses on. We got to get real here in this state. This is going to be ugly, and people are going to get mad for all the wrong reasons. They shouldn't have been 3 or 4. They probably should have been on the outside and someone else going in. And it hurts to say that, but sometimes you got to take the truth, and it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Coach Bennett, you have a rebuttal?
I'll tell you what. Nobody's going to be buying Coach Heath a drink in Ohio for a while. Not until it's over. I think Ohio State got propped up for one reason and one reason only. The Big Ten is a money conference, and it makes a lot more sense. You're only going to let 4 in, and you've already got 2. Clemson didn't beat Notre Dame bad enough to knock them out. So you got 2 from the ACC, which is not what the committee wants. They want 2 from the SEC and 1 from the Big Ten and Clemson. But if they're already going to have to grit their teeth and let Clemson and Notre Dame in, there is no way they were going to let Texas A&M in without playing in a conference championship game. I think even if Florida would have beat Alabama, there was no way they were going to let a 2-loss Florida team in, even as the SEC champ. That precedent's already been set from where was it Auburn won the SEC championship a few years ago, and Alabama got in the playoff. And Auburn beat Georgia. Shocker, but they need the Big Ten, so they prop Indiana up. And God bless Tom Allen. I think Tom Allen's a phenomenal football coach. Not taking anything away from him and the job he's done, but for them to be ranked as high as they are, and all that, I mean, they beat Penn State, who started out 0-4. They beat Penn State on the last play of the game by an inch, by inches, literal inches, is what they took to beat Penn State, which is a huge win for their program. Again, not taking anything away, but you got to look at who they beat. They escaped through the Big Ten, which is you know, the Big Ten's down this year, and it's not going to stay down. Too good of a conference. But all Indiana's done is squeak out some victories and played Ohio State close in the fourth quarter. Ohio State stretched that thing out on them. I would have less of a problem with Ohio State being in if they were to just put their foot on Indiana's throat and beat the piss out of them like they were. But then they let them eat back in the game. You know, and then the worst thing, if the Big Ten would have said, Ohio State doesn't have enough games to get in the conference championship, and the committee put them in at 5-0, well, then it's not. They have made Ohio State more hateable by bending the rules for them, getting them into a game they shouldn't have been into by their own rules they set, and now they beat Northwestern. You robbed Indiana of having a chance because they got the games in to play in a very huge program-changing game for them in Northwestern. So let the big bad bully get back in the game, struggle for 3 quarters, and then eventually the town takes over and they win. The one thing I will say that I love Ohio State for, don't clip that or anything, don't play that on loop or anything, is, and this is the one thing that's the saving grace for me with them getting in. When the chips were down and the Big Ten said, we're not playing football, Ohio State dug their heels in with Nebraska and said, by God, yes, we are. So for that, let the Buckeyes come on in the playoffs, smack them around a little bit and send them back home. But they, by God, bring them on. Bring them on in the party.
I can't tell you how funny it was to watch the it's a good thing that, you know, I don't know how many fans were there or parents, whatever. Warren came out to give him the trophy, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how funny is this? The guy who pretty much put the Big Ten in a bad spot now has to hand over the trophy to the team that was the thorn in his side and led the protest. They went to Chicago and protested. Mm-hmm. The thing is, no one was in the building, because they were at some kind of retreat or something like that. It's a funny story, but it's true. But at the same time, I mean, here's the thing. Normally I wouldn't agree with Coach Bennett, but I have to, because he's right on so many levels. It should have been Indiana in the championship game against Northwestern. They went and changed the rules because the conference needed to have that team in to get the money because of what has happened this year. That's what it was. It's money driven. Indiana, you're right. That would have been a program changing opportunity for them. I'm Hoosier born, and Buckeye, I guess, by choice. And it's one of those things where, it bothers me because you hurt your conference at the end of the day. You really do hurt your conference whenever you sit there and try to do that. It undermines everything that you're trying to work for, which is bettering the entire conference. And Ohio State was exposed big time by what Indiana, and it has happened every year, and I've said it for the past 3 years to family and friends, all that would listen in Indiana. Indiana's charging. They're going to be a team that's going to be around. They're not going anywhere. They're doing all the things right, and you got to see it this year. Ohio State's lucky they got out of. To tell you the truth, they should have lost that game. On many levels, there's opportunities for Indiana. Indiana couldn't seal the deal. We shouldn't even be talking about Ohio State at this point. Why are we? Because they were able to get lucky in that situation, and then they had, and the money was important to the conference, and that's why they are where they are. And yes, I'm sure I'm going to hear all kinds of hate from people in Ohio State, but you got to get real, people. I mean, you got to get real. This is the state. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but this is the state of this playoff, this invitational. And Ohio State decided to be a pawn here, was used as a pawn. That's all this is, unfortunately. It's hard to say, but it's true.
Another thing that Ohio State's got going for them that a lot of programs don't, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is just a matter of happenstance, and good luck, good things happen. Is they've got a national mouthpiece on Saturday, every Saturday, talking about how great Ohio State is, and he's on Fox, and they got the Big 10 games and the Big 12 games are on there. And Urban Meyer's a great mouthpiece for the university, which is probably why they're still cutting him a check. And there's nothing wrong with that. Clemson's never going to have that because Danny Ford's too old to get on TV. Nor should he probably be on a hot mic. There's no telling what he'd say. And then, Danny Ford, trivia question, Danny Ford's first game as a head football coach. Anybody know? 78 Gator Bowl against the Ohio State University. Danny Ford started his career out 1-0 against Woody Hayes.
Woody Hayes. Yeah, that's...
Punch Charlie Bauman. Dirty program. Starts at the top.
Steve, you have any comments on Ohio State?
I don't think they're a top 6 team. Watching them play, I think Justin Fields is overrated. I think he's very inconsistent. I don't like their secondary on defense. I think that's why Indiana was able to have success. Now, Ohio State's linemen and linebackers are very, very good. So if you can't run the ball on them, which probably not, you have to be able to pass the ball. Now, Northwestern could run the ball, and when they couldn't pass it. So they didn't have any threats. So, but I think this all comes down to, as a bigger picture, was there was no leadership in the NCAA saying, okay, right from the get-go, here's your game threshold. You have to get this many games in. So, I love to blame Ohio State, but it comes down to the president for NCAA was like, nope, do your own thing. Then the Big Ten wanted to play hide and seek and try to say, we're not going to play. Who's going to follow us? The Pac-12 is. And everybody else goes, no, we're going to play. And then the Big Ten was like, oh, wait a minute, it can work. We want money. Let's play. And then I think and again, it comes from the NCAA president. Then it comes from the Big Ten. Did they think there was going to be no cancellations? Did they, honest to God, thought, we're going to give them 8 weeks. If they would have put in right from the get-go, if a game gets canceled, you have the right to go schedule. There's no threshold of a game to get into the Big Ten championship. It would have been different. We would have been fine with it, I think.
How about just start in September?
Or, yeah.
Like everyone else? Like everyone else? Amazing. Right?
That's bad. It's bad leadership, and that's why I say, I salute the Buckeyes for digging their heels in with Iowa and Nebraska, because God knows Iowa and Nebraska they needed They needed Ohio State to do that. And Ryan Day felt like, and he should, Ryan Day felt like we got a good chance. Anybody, we need to play. And as far as schematics and players go, I've watched Ohio State a few times this year, and Justin Fields, he's a three-point shooter, man. Man, when he is hot, he's as good as there is. When he's bad, his bad won't beat Clemson. He'll have to have the game of his life.
Well, without certain pieces, he's quarterback play with the way. I mean, if you watch how the Buckeyes play, I mean, if he doesn't have Olave, that's a problem, because Olave is that guy who can take the top off and everything is go 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 until it's not, and you need that guy to keep it. That's his security blanket.
Yep.
And he has struggled whenever someone has done a great job on Olave. Now, are there good receivers there? Yes, but there's definitely that chemistry. When things get tough, you know who he wants to go to. And he's made some plays, in the past 2 games, falling down, doing things. That's a quarterback that's pressing. Against Clemson, he's not the best quarterback, definitely not the best quarterback in the field. And you know as well as I do, you guys, quarterback play is absolutely huge whenever you have your big games. Absolutely. And the dude on the other side, he's not going to flinch. But I've seen Justin Fields flinch a little bit. Mm-hmm. More than a little bit. So there's just so many layers to this of, again, there's two different Ohio State teams that we're talking about. Which one do we get? When do we find out which one's going to go out against Clemson? Or does it even matter? I say no. Because, we'll talk later whenever we talk probably about the matchup, and I'll tell you, there's only 2 ways that Ohio State makes it close.
I'm anxious to see how they play Clemson defensively, because last year the Ohio State game might be, you make a strong case, that's the best game Trevor Lawrence has ever played. Not because he threw for 1,000 yards or anything like that, but because Ohio State hit him, and hit him hard, and hit him a lot. He got beat on as much in that game as he ever had. And he took a lick and kept on ticking. I thought about that when you said that he doesn't flinch, or he won't flinch. And by God, if he was ever going to flinch,
I didn't see it last year.
Ohio State, they beat him to death.
Yeah, Chase Young coming after him, and he didn't back down. He definitely didn't back down. And there's no Chase Young. I mean, I have a former player who is a defensive lineman at Ohio State, and I've seen those dudes, but there are not dominant dudes. They're good, but they're not dominant dudes up there.
But you know what they are? And another thing I'll give to Ohio State, them SOBs up front on defensive line are well coached. Mm-hmm. They're well coached. That guy, that's another fun little game inside the games. You got Robbie Caldwell, offensive line, versus, what's his name?
Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson, yeah.
Larry Johnson.
Same name as the Penn State running back. The Larry Johnson, Robbie Caldwell battling the trenches. Those are 2 well-coached units, and they're not the groups that get all the love, because when people think Ohio State, other than the Bosa's, you think about, man, DBs. They got all kinds of DBs in the league. Their defensive line's always solid, really well coached. And Clemson's offensive line gets less love than any offensive line I've ever seen, and they're well coached and they play hard. It's going to be, that's the fun. That's the X's and O's, coach speak. That's the game within the game to watch, is that offensive line versus that defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we talk about like the actual match, I mean, of course, we're talking about teams now, but we're talking about that matchup. I mean, again, I think there's only 2 ways that Ohio State keeps it close. And I'll wait and talk about that. But sorry, yeah. Steve, we kind of made you have to wait.
Let's talk about Notre Dame.
Yeah, and I'll let Coach Steve talk first on Notre Dame, since he's kind of quiet a little bit every once in a while. But number 4 out of our top 4, the last one to get in, and before I let Coach Steve in, I think honestly Notre Dame is the 2020 version of the sacrificial lamb to Alabama in the playoffs. The Washington, the Michigan State, that's who Notre Dame is this year. And we'll talk about the matchup later. But Coach Steve, your thoughts on Notre Dame?
I feel bad for them. They're going to get curb stomped by Bama. I don't think they're as bad as everyone thinks they are, but it's you couldn't have had them at number 3 because you could not have Clemson play Notre Dame for the 3rd time. That wasn't going to happen. So they were going to be 4 or 5, unless if they would have beat Clemson, and then Clemson would have been out, and we would have had a big uproar because I still think they would have been 2 or 3 best team in the nation. I don't think they're as bad as everybody thinks they are. I just don't know if they adjust well. They just kept winning, and then they got to Clemson again, and they said, let's just do what we did last time. But you have everybody playing for Clemson, so they just didn't adjust well. But I think Notre Dame had some of the best balanced offense with running the football and passing it with their tight ends and all that. I don't think they're as bad as everyone thinks they are. If you actually sit down and watch them, they're not that bad. Mm-hmm. They got a big offensive line. They got big, tall tight ends. If Ian Book can get outside the pocket, kind of like a Mitchell Trubisky, when the Bears don't do it, when he can roll out and pass it, he's pretty good. It's hard. Part of me is like, yeah, they should be number 4. Then a part of me is like, who do you put in? It should be Texas A&M. I don't know. It just sucks. I think Notre Dame deserves a shot, but it just sucks that it has to be Bama because Bama's going to score 50 by halftime. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me to answer because I just wish this is where we're going to get to. The college football playoff needs to be fixed. But I'm going to tell you about that. They're not as bad as everyone thinks they are.
Yeah, I don't think they're a bad team. Like, just to build on what you were saying there, I think what they do is they try their offensive system seems to be they try to rely on beating the other team with talent and not necessarily with X's and O's. Their offensive coordinator is my age. That pisses me off a little bit. I'm over here. I'm just a lowly offensive line coach in high school, and their offensive coordinator is 28 years old. So, I don't think he's had enough experience to be a excellent play caller. I think he's a good play caller, and he uses his talent to the best ability. He uses his talent the way he thinks he can, but he's no Lane Kiffin. He's no Steve Sarkisian. Take one of those guys and put them in Notre Dame at offensive coordinator. Could you imagine the types of years that they'd be able to have with the talent that they get year in and year out? I mean, I don't know.
The best thing that happened was when Kelly stopped calling plays and just let people coach, and he just took a step back. Because I'm not the big fan of his. Like, I hope he if Urban Meyer goes there, if he leaves Urban Meyer goes there, watch out for Notre Dame, because that's where Urban's going to go. But the best thing for Notre Dame was when he stopped calling plays and he just became a head coach, because we haven't seen red-faced Kelly since then, because he took a step back and was like, I don't need to do this. Mm-hmm. And then here's a question. I don't know if the defensive coordinator got hired at Vanderbilt. Was he calling defense that game? Was he there doing it still?
Yeah, he's finishing out.
Now, is he distracted? Was that a part of it? Kind of like the Lane Kiffin thing in Alabama was a distraction. Not to make excuses, but I was just wondering, watching the game, I was like, they're not adjusting very well. Is he even there? Or is he distracted? Like, does he want to get to Vanderbilt because he knows what kind of hellhole he's walking into at Vanderbilt? Like,
nobody knows better than him. He played there.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame, I'll be the bad cop to Coach Steve. Coach Steve's never going to say anything bad about Alabama or anybody. He's never going to say they're not going to beat somebody by 100. Notre Dame has the ability. As a Clemson fan, I can tell you, because I saw it the first go-around, they have the ability to make plays to muddy a game up. They made Travis Etienne put the ball on the ground. Not too many people's done that. Is Travis Etienne better at holding on to the ball or as good as Najee is? You force a fumble. You go up 7-0. Then if they can, the only way they can beat Alabama is to make Alabama play from behind, and lean on that offensive line and those tight ends, and make it a rock fight. And I don't know if they can do that. But that's what they're going to have to do. I guess we can talk more about that in the matchups. But Notre Dame, I got no problem with them being in. If Texas A&M wanted to be in, they shouldn't have lost by $1 million to St. Nick. Plus, the golden helmets look great in prime time.
Yeah. A lot of people like the gold helmets.
They put the flakes in them. I mean, it's beautiful.
The last time Notre Dame was on the last time they played Alabama was a national title game, right? That was when Manti Te'o was the linebacker, right?
Yes.
I remember, and everybody thought that was one of the greatest Notre Dame teams to ever play the game. And look what Alabama did to them that year. I mean, I think it's going to be a very similar situation. Notre Dame's a great squad. Yeah, they're good. They've got a lot of talent. I think that conversation, what I said earlier, Alabama plays to an Alabama standard. Notre Dame just tries to lean on people with talent. They don't necessarily play to a standard. I think that Alabama standard is going to win out, honestly. But any other thoughts before we move on to our previews?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Well, why don't we go ahead and talk about that game first? All right, the first semifinal, number 1 Alabama versus number 4 Notre Dame. We can just go ahead and quickly what do we think is going to happen? I think almost all of us are in agreement with what we think is going to happen. Coach Bennett, you want to go first?
Which matchup?
Notre Dame, Alabama.
What are we doing? Keys to the game and score prediction?
Sure. Yep.
Keys to the game for Alabama is just be Alabama. Key for Notre Dame, slow it down. See if you can get the folks at the bowl game to maybe grow the grass a little taller. Try to slow them down. I'm sure it's on turf. Where are they playing? Pasadena? Nobody's playing in Pasadena.
Texas.
Playing Jerry World.
Jerry World. Oh, yeah. The Tide on the fast turf. Ooh. Notre Dame's got to slow it down and run the football. 45-24.
Okay.
Roll Tide, roll.
All right, Coach Steve.
If Notre Dame tries to run the ball, get some tight ends, do some shifts, short passes, a little play action, get Ian Book outside the pocket, that's how they'll move the ball. Coach Bennett said it. You want to slow down Alabama, you better keep that offense on the sideline and Sarkisian over there watching. Alabama just needs to go out and just do what they do. Sarkisian keeps calling plays like he is. This is a career-saving place all of a sudden for Alabama. You bring some guys in, they reinvent themselves. But I think it's going to be 55-17 or something like that. I don't know. If Clemson can do that to Notre Dame, I can't imagine what Alabama's going to do. So it's going to be 55-17, 55-24, something like that. They can score 50 on Florida, who I think is better, like Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think they can do that there.
All right, and Coach Heath.
I think first and foremost, if you are Brian Kelly, you say, Tommy, you've done a really good job all season, but you're not ready for Alabama. So let me take this one. And I think that's the key. I think that you have to have a little bit more experience in the play calling. I think it's that's important for them to have any kind of shot. I think that you got to have wisdom of Brian Kelly to guide, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Bama is just too dominant. If they don't score at least 7 touchdowns, I'd be very surprised. So, I mean, that's all I got to say about that. To me, I don't think that Notre Dame puts up more than 3 touches on them. That'd be something crazy has to happen for them to, I mean, to tell you the truth, it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't shut them out. Because I think Bama is just that much better. Just that much better. So I guess I'll go 49-0. if you want to ask me, is 49-0.
And Coach Steve, I think you mentioned a couple times that Notre Dame did not adjust very well on defense. I still don't think they're going to make many adjustments when they go up against Alabama, and Sark is going to make them pay. It's just I'm not even going to try to come up with a score for this game because I don't want to.
Oh, soft.
Sermon.
All right. At the least, I think it's going to be 42 to 21. At least. I do think Notre Dame can score, but I think they're going to come late, and Alabama's going to get up on them early, and then just stomp their foot on their neck, and the scores are going to come late because they're going to try to throw the ball.
I think it's 14-7 Notre Dame at the end of one, and then you get that classic shot of Saban just screaming at one of his assistants, and then it's Katie bar the door.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the next matchup. We've got Ohio State at number 3 versus Clemson at number 2. Coach Steve, I'm going to let you have this one first. Keys to the game and what you think the score might be.
Ryan Day needs to quit being outsmarting himself because it looked like he was trying to make sure Fields got his and got some film during that Northwestern game because he was just passing. Fields wasn't hitting it. Overthrew a post by like 8 yards. And then they started running the ball. And he's like, oh, let's run the ball. This works. And then they got the red zone past it. So the keys of the game is Ryan Day quit being an idiot. If you're going to try to win, just run the ball. And again, it's kind of like Notre Dame. You got to keep Lawrence on the sideline. You got to keep Clemson's offense on that sideline and take some clock. And you just got out formation them and this and that. But at the end of the day, Ohio State's secondary is not very good. They lost a lot of NFL players. They're not the best. So their secondary is going to have to play well, which they're not. And Lawrence is going to kill them. They're going to be able to run the ball. It's going to be similar. I think it's going to be like a 55-24 game, something like that. And with Dabo talking a lot, I think he wants to put up those points. And I think he's trying to get under Day's skin to make them pass the ball and try to do that. I think he's really trying to push the envelope. So it's going to be like a 55-20 game maybe,
okay,
if not 17 again.
Coach Heath is our resident Ohio State expert. What are your thoughts?
Well, I told you earlier, there's 2 ways that Ohio State, we didn't see Master Teague. We saw a whole lot of, Sermon. And that's something new. That's kind of a new development. Will they be able to do what they did against Northwestern? No, not against Clemson. And that's what Coach Bennett talked about earlier. It's a battle in the trenches. And it's going to be a key early on. Who's winning that? Because if the running game gets shut down, then you got to throw. Do they have Chris Olave? Are some of those young receivers going to step up? There's more question marks right now than anything. And I think if you're Ryan Day, you've got to use that to your advantage. Do you have to throw trickeration in? I don't think so, but I think you definitely have to look at it. The one thing that his time in the NFL, I think, plays well here for him, for Ryan Day. It's kind of a quick turnaround. I think that maybe you use some of that experience from the NFL on, those quick turnaround, those weeks with a quick turnaround. You play Sunday, you're going to play Thursday. I think you got to kind of use that experience and see what you can come away with, because they're going to have to come up with something that Clemson is not expecting. Venables is too good of a defensive coordinator. You're not going to be able to, and you've got to hope that you're going to catch that momentum early and be able to maintain it. They have to get out. To me, their first 2 possessions offensively, they have got to find a way to score, and it's not field goals. They got to get in the end zone, and they got to do it in the first 2. And they got to, because you can't just say, well, okay, so we scored once. No, we've seen this. We've seen this movie. It ends badly, and you've got to have momentum if you're Ohio State. But you also got, you're right, and you guys are right. But you said already, you got to be able to control the ball, and that's, winning the line of scrimmage with, Sermon got all the yards because he didn't really have any kind of backup. It'd be interesting to see if Master Teague is able to come back. Who else comes back? If you don't get Chris Olave, no chance. If you don't get Master Teague back to have a 1-2 punch, there's no chance. And if Ryan Day can't come up with a game plan that allows this game to become a chess match with Will Venables, I think that's a problem. But I think at the end of the day, there's just too many pieces on the other side. Shaun Wade is a guy who, if he wants to make big-time money for himself, he has to show up in this game. He has to do something, and he has to lead that young secondary. Larry Johnson's better be doing the best coaching of his lifetime, getting those guys ready as well. It's going to take an all-out effort, and then you wonder, just to win this game, how much does it take out of you? It's going to take. I hate to say a perfect game, but it might just take a perfect game from the Buckeyes. That's the only way. There's only two ways that they win: ball control and something different that they are able to score early and just kind of keep that momentum.
All right, Coach Bennett.
I didn't get a score prediction from Heath on that. What's the score prediction?
That's just it. I don't know. If we talk about Buckeye A, then I think it's. Here's the thing: it's the difference between 14 and probably 4 score and 28. That, in my mind, that's what it is. What's the product that is going to represent the Ohio State University? Is it going to be sample A or is it going to be sample B? To tell you the truth, neither one. Right now, I don't have faith in either one being any more than 14 points. There's a two-score spread there to me, and it's not something I want to admit, but these are facts, friends. These are facts.
I love that. These are facts, friends. I'm gonna use that. I don't have many friends, but
neither do I. But I'm just trying to fake it till I make it.
I will. I'll be your friend, James. I think the keys to the game for the I-Dotters, the Ohio State University, dial up a little air raid here for Coach Steve. I think if the running back that didn't run all over Northwestern, the other one, if he's back, they need to hop in a lot of blue and green and put 2 backs in the backfield and see how Venables plays it. Because if I'm not mistaken, when I've watched Ohio State, I haven't seen a lot of that.
No.
Because they've had that stud, and then he gets hurt, and they just put another one in. Put them both back there, especially if you're down a receiver, or even if he's back. Getting some 2-back stuff, try to slow it down, muddy it up, get Fields close and comfortable in the flow of the game early. He can certainly get away and make big plays with his legs, and if we let him run around forever, he'll burn us. Ohio State's got to control the football, and the only thing that worries me from a Clemson standpoint is we have been prone to turning the football over this year, seemingly more than we have in the past. And I'm probably just hyper-focused on ETN fumbling the ball against Notre Dame, but Ohio State's got to control the clock and take the ball away. Steal a possession somewhere. Onside kick early when it's unexpected, or get a strip sack, or because God knows they're coming after 16. They're gonna chase him around. Surely they won't just sit back quarters and let him throw it. That's for Ohio State. For Clemson, I think it's just be Clemson. Play Clemson plays well in big spots, and there's been times where they've had to gut it out. Think about last year against Ohio State. You'd make a really, really, really strong case that Ohio State was a better team than Clemson last year. I mean, I wouldn't begrudge you if you wanted to make that argument, because they had a all-pro NFL defensive lineman who he didn't sack Trevor, but he made his life a living hell for 4 quarters, chasing him around. He chased him into some car crashes. Couple bad calls by the officials, and I'm not so much of a homer that I won't say there weren't some bad calls. There were some bad calls, but Clemson's had bad calls go against them too. Just didn't in that particular game. For Clemson, it's hold on to the ball, don't turn it over, end every possession with a kick. If you do that, you should be all right.
That's a big difference, isn't it? You can talk about Clemson finishing with a kick. I mean, that's another thing I didn't even talk about. We're talking about special teams in big games. And people say, people are going to sit there and say, you're talking about a kicker, you're talking about a punter. Listen, the kick game hadn't been right for Ohio State all year. And the punt game, when you got a decent backup punter, but Drew Chrisman is a big part of what Ohio State does as far as, like, field position. Give Trevor a short field and watch what happens. It ain't good.
It'll end with a kick.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, Clemson, BT Potter, the kicker for Clemson, he's a game changer because he always kicks it out of the back of the end zone, so you know where they're starting from. And he's got the leg to kick it from 60 if he has to, if it comes down to that. He can boot it. And that's a game changer. And the punt team's been really good all year. The thing that always used to get Clemson when Coach Sweeney, when they were first starting to get good, like when Todd Boyd and all those guys were there, is they were maybe the worst kick coverage team on the planet. They were really bad. If a ball got returned, it was going to get returned for a while. That's not the case so much anymore. I mean, Clemson's got to schematically, I think the only thing Clemson's got to do different, that sometimes they do drift away from, and it's no shocker with me being the way I am, is they can't forget that 9's back there in the backfield. Hand him the ball.
Yeah.
Don't throw it to him in the flats. Don't run him on an angle route. The screens are awesome, but you don't have to run 15 on the game. Run power and get him going downhill. And I think that's where it comes into the Coach Caldwell versus Coach Johnson. Coach Johnson, one of the best offensive line coaches, one of the best defensive line coaches, and both of them got players. It's such a fun matchup. I mean, even in the game, even though it was 31-0 or something like that, the game where Clemson just beat the piss out of Ohio State, that game was still a war in the trenches. It was just Clemson made more big plays with their skill guys. But man, up front, that game's still physical. Physical.
Yeah, and we talk about pieces. The one thing you're talking about is hand the ball off to 9. Let's talk about what they do very well in the pass game with 9 as well. I mean, the way that they get him involved in the pass game is a threat that's a scary thing for Ohio State too. Because he doesn't necessarily have to kill you in between the tackles. He didn't have to kill you there. He can kill you in the pass game. They just do such a great job of using the pieces that they have. That's one thing I worry about. The Buckeye offense sometimes gets it's two-dimensional. And I'm sorry. You can take, yeah.
ATN is the most underappreciated player in college football.
Yeah, why don't people talk about him? I don't get, I don't understand it. I mean, that's a quality football player. He can do it all.
At the same time as they built, everybody in Clemson knew who Trevor Lawrence was and what number he was going to wear before he ever stepped foot on campus.
Mm-hmm.
He just came along at a time where he's in between Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And those are two, how fortunate we've been to have two generational type quarterbacks back to back but then in amongst them, we've wedged in. I mean, other than C.J. Spiller, probably the best Clemson running back that's been in the program in the last ever.
That's the best. That's the best the ACC has seen. I mean, and it's one of the best. I mean, I was at Ohio State around the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, what he does each and every day, I don't know, but he's doing something right. Well, why isn't he mentioned? And I know you're going to say, well, Trevor's the face. He's the guy. People love good quarterbacks. I mean, talking to a guy who he's going to be playing on Sundays, and he's going to be good for a team because he can do it all. Even I'm a running backs coach. Whenever I say if you can step in and pass pro, all right. That's the only thing to me. He maybe has to get a little bit better at in his game. He can catch the ball, and he can run it. I mean, he's a dude, and that's scary too because So you gear up to stop the run. They're throwing him in the pass game. How do you account for that? If you're sitting here trying to figure that, well, I'm going to have to, gear for the run. That's again, that's that chess game. That's the thing that it'll be fun to watch, no matter what the score is. But I just think that there's too many pieces.
Y'all watch what I say. I think they've been running Trevor a lot, so Ohio State and Alabama over prepare for it.
So put that out there on film. Absolutely.
So they can hand the ball to 9. He can get a credit. He don't need but 8. He's much like your guy Eddie George, about 18 inches of daylight is all he. And I know that was old Walter Payton deal, but Gale Sayers one of the Bear facts. But that's all ETN needs. I mean, I've been around the program at practices and things, and man, I think one of the reasons he's not highly touted. I mean, Coach Swinney sings his praises all the time, but he's only one. Is he's really not he don't care about that kind of stuff. He's from middle of nowhere in Louisiana and all shucks kind of guy. He fits really well into what Coach Swinney's built because he don't really care about if we play Ohio State and win and he takes it 4 times, he don't care as long as we win. He'd much rather do that than carry it 40 and lose.
Well, I will say one last thing real fast. It's kind of funny, and Coach Bennett, I've been saving this for Coach Bennett. So there's every year, and it's kind of Coach Sheffer kind of mentioned about with the bowl games and everything, and my son will watch Ohio State, but he has a certain liking for a certain team that wears orange, and his mother is a graduate of The Ohio State University, and of course spent my time there, so he's close to being grounded and losing his phone because he tends to like this team from down south that wears orange. That's real good, but it's I can't hate him for loving good football. That's the bottom line. And the thing that bothers me is I wish we were getting the best against best. We're just not going to get it. Either way. I mean. Again, Ryan Day says some guys are north of the line as far as who gets to play out of those 22 dudes, and some of them are on the. They're not going to change it again just to help Ohio State. They would have helped if they would have went to 14 days instead of the 17 days, but we won't know because they keep that quiet. But yeah, it's been an interesting time because the. Notre Dame Clemson game got watched a heck of a lot more in this household than Ohio State against Northwestern, and a certain young lad in my household was caught cheering for the team in orange, and we had to sit him down and try to set him straight. I don't think we did a good job of it, but we tried our best.
Could you imagine how you're a Buckeye? How's Herb Street feeling right now?
Oh,
Herb Street has to watch this every year.
There's a reason why he's not in Columbus, though.
Yeah,
because he understands what goes on within the confines of this state. And if Banster was on here, he might stop for a second and try to backpedal on it, but he knows as well as I do that people the scarlet colored glasses are on, and it's a problem. It's a problem. Now in the future looks great, But we aren't there yet. We're in 2020, going to play in 2021, and we're going to get delivered a can of something that we aren't ready for. And people are going to have a meltdown, and they won't be right for, they'll want to go back to 2020. But by the time that this is done, people complained about this year 2020. They're going to want to go back in the beginning of 2021 because of what's going to happen. I'm just trying to let them know. I'm just trying to be the good prophet. Let them know what's going to happen here. So if you're a Buckeye fan, brace yourself, because it's like I said to someone the other day. The Romans paid to see tigers maul gladiators in silver helmets, and history is about to repeat itself.
41-14.
Okay.
And I only say that because I don't know Coach Dave. Davo don't like him.
Yeah.
And Coach Sweeney would never put them 11th if he didn't know something the rest of us don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's take a little shift in gears here, and we're going to talk about the playoff system itself a little bit. And there may be a day where we can have another episode that's specifically talking just about this subject, and we can go into a lot more depth with this because we're definitely over an hour already. But we're going to talk about our thoughts on the playoff. And, my personal thought is it's what we have right now. It worked for a couple of years, but the system that they built wasn't meant to last much longer than a few years. They were supposed to, within the regional plans, after a few years, expand it after a test trial. And we have not seen any evidence of any kind of expansion front coming up yet. The whole point of the bowl system that we have now was to get rid of the BCS, which everyone thought was because it was computers and the SEC was getting 2 teams in the national title game a couple years there. It was unfair, and there was always the way I like to explain it is it's the Boise State situation. In the 2000s, the 2010s, Boise State was that team from the outside looking in. They had the talent. They had the coaches. They were beating the snot out of every opponent they played, including like a Virginia Tech, a pretty good Virginia Tech team, a decent Georgia team. Everybody they played in a bowl game, they beat the crap out of. If they were playing now, I think they would be the Cincinnati of the situation. If that Boise State team was playing now and they were doing the same thing they were doing back in the day, they would be in Cincinnati's situation. The whole point of the bowl system was to give teams like that a shot, right? Give teams like a Boise State a shot at potentially making a national championship and giving the other Power 5 schools a shot as well, the ones who were not quite there. And guess what? We have not seen one group of 5 team in the playoff yet. And there have been a couple, specifically UCF, which I believe should have been there. But they never got the shot. Cincinnati, maybe. I don't know if this year's Cincinnati team was as good as UCF was a couple years ago under Scott Frost. But I have a hard time seeing an undefeated Division I football team, and you can talk about strength of schedule all you want. They're still unbeaten. They won their conference. I have a hard time telling a team like that you don't belong in the national title game, or you don't deserve a chance because you're not this team. I have a hard time with that. At the very least, we need a 6-team playoff with, at least one of those spots guaranteed to some like Power 5 or Group of 5 team, the highest ranked Group of 5, just to give them a shot. At the very least, I would love to see. I know a couple weeks ago somebody posted it was a mock 16-team draft or 16-team playoff system, where the top six, they had it, the top 16 were in the top out of the top 25. Personally, I would love to see a system that's set up very much like what Division III has, at least from what I understand of what the Division III playoffs is if you win your conference, you are guaranteed a spot in the playoff. And then the rest of the playoff slots are filled in by whoever else is ranked in the top 25, and so on. We cannot call what we have right now with a straight face a playoff system. What we have, and we mentioned it before, it's an invitational. And if you're not a big name school, if you're not in Ohio State, you're not a Notre Dame, you're not a Clemson, you're not in Alabama, you're not a Florida who could have made it, you're not an LSU, you're not getting in. They need to come out, and I know I'm on a soapbox right now. They need to come out straight ahead at the beginning of the season and say, hey, Cincinnati, we know you're a good team this year, but you're not getting in the playoff no matter what you do. Period. They just need to come out with it. And I had a tweet the other day that I said, if this is the situation that we're going to be in and you're going to keep this playoff, we just need to go ahead and say what we need to do and split the Power 5 conferences and the Group of 5 conferences and just make new divisions within Division I. And each of those groups gets their own national championship. Because this is ridiculous. If these are Division I programs and they're going unbeaten without a shot at being even in the playoffs, that's ridiculous. It's all about money. And the bowls don't matter anymore. The only bowls that matter are the playoffs.
And the ones Army and Navy playing.
Huh?
And the ones Army and Navy playing.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the smaller, I think we mentioned it before, some of the smaller schools, for example, the one that I think of all the time, last year, Kent State, go to a bowl game, and God knows how long it's been since they've been to a bowl game, and they actually win the first bowl game in program history under one of the youngest head coaches in Division I.
Mm-hmm.
That matters. That kind of thing matters. But tell me with a straight face that Texas A&M versus North Carolina in a bowl game actually matters. Would you be surprised if North Carolina comes out and just beats the crap out of Texas A&M? Because there's the whole, I know it's probably not likely to happen, but the whole situation where, does Texas A&M want to be there?
It'd be great, though. Anytime an ACC team beats an SEC team, an Angel gets their win.
What are your guys' thoughts on expansion? Do you guys have a preferred playoff system that you've been thinking about?
The D3 works because you got 4 regions, 8 teams. You got 4 regions, 8 teams, and it seems to work. Here's the thing. Pretty much, Mount Union's in pretty much the neighbor's backyard. When I say the neighbor's backyard, I mean I'm real close to that. Kent State is even closer. It's 20 minutes away from where I live, and it was great to see them have that opportunity. It'd be great to see a MAC school be able to be one of those teams that gets to play. Now you're gonna have a bunch of naysayers who are gonna sit there and they're gonna say, well, are they really one of the best teams if we take 32? I don't care. How about representation? If they're part of the body that makes up Division I, then they need to have a seat at that table. Now, if they get their heads kicked in, then guess what? They got to get better. It is what it is. We watch in March, and upsets happen. Mm-hmm. But it's still fun to watch because a 16 team forever got their heads kicked in most of the time by a 1. And then all of a sudden, Virginia loses to, Baltimore County.
UMBC.
Yes. Okay. These are the kinds of things where it's good for the sport. You can't continue this invitational charade. You just can't. Open it up. Let it. It's just so much better for And Kirk Herbstreit said it. What it comes down to is you're telling 90% of major college football, thanks for playing, but you're not in the big boys club. That has to change. It's better. It's going to be better, healthier for the sport. What we see with March Madness is it can happen with football. It can. It would be a great opportunity. Now we're going to get into all the talk of who hosts games and things like that. I don't care. There's still big time money, and it's going to. Steve's surrounded by money here. I see that. Here's the bottom line. It needs to be shared. And that's another part of the whole thing, I think, with the whole playoff. There's been this big debate and everything. More money, help some of these players out. I understand, that's a whole nother argument.
Oh, God. We'll talk all night. We'll start talking about this.
But what I'm saying is you cannot just keep it consolidated to a few. It needs to be expanded out. And it's better for the sport. Mm-hmm. Basketball did it for that reason, so the small people could get a piece of the pie. And it's worked out well for them. What's wrong? Division III does it. My understanding, Division II does it. It works for them. And I think it's the same thing. 4 regions, 8 teams. You can't tell me that you're going to not get, good matchups out of that.
I agree.
I think, and I'll be real quick on this. I think to meet everybody in the middle, they don't want to add that many games. 8-team playoff, 5 conference champs get in, 2 highest ranked group of 5 get in. You get 1 at large. If Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama all 3 lose their conference championship games, tough shit. Pick one of them, and it'll probably be Alabama. Yeah. And that's my way. You get your top 2 group of 5s by the coaches' poll rankings. So the coaches are basically voting for what group of 5s are the best. And then you get 1 at large. So you're probably second best SEC team because that's who everybody loves on. The second best SEC team gets in. You placate everybody a little bit.
Coach Steve?
I agree with that. I also said, we always talk about the top 25. What does that mean? Now, it used to be the top 2. At the end of the year, you find out who's top 2. Now it's the top 4. If you're not the top 4, it's like, oh, well, you didn't do it. And I think maybe just, first of all, they don't want to go up to 12 games a year. Like the 12 games for the schools, they don't want to do. Like FCS level, they play 9 games and they do playoffs. And they travel to each other's school and play, and they go to the national championship. I love how they do it. So why can't you just do, let's play 9 or 10 games a year, because we're Division I, we're the big boys. Let's play 9 or 10 games. Top 25 gets the playoff. The first seed gets a bye. So, Alabama would get a bye this week, this playoff week. And you play. And they travel to each other's school because it's good recruiting for those schools. Could you imagine if, I don't know, let's say somebody had to go to Coastal Carolina, some big-time Division I that's ranked lower, go to Coastal Carolina. That's big-time recruiting. That's getting them on TV. That's bringing us, without COVID, that's fans. Mm-hmm. And then maybe 2 things. The rest of the teams have a qualifier where they go play a bowl game. It still kind of means something. Or do what basketball does. This is the playoff for this region or whatever. This is top 25. And then when NCAA has that other bracket they do.
NIT.
Do something like that. Okay, then the next 25 or 30 or whoever, you got to have this qualifier for how many wins you have, and you guys go have your own, so they continue to play. And then now you have something to shoot for. Now we have a better shot to get to top 25, or we have a shot to get to top 50 or 60 and still go play, even though it's the minor league playoff, go play. It's more realistic. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to change everything, but try to do something like that and not just whatever, because top 25 means nothing. After a while, it's cool. For Coastal Carolinas of the world and stuff, it's cool to be ranked. I would love Illinois to be ranked up that high. I would have been ecstatic. But at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, when you have a team competing for the playoffs, it means nothing. Right now, A&M and Cincinnati would have a shot if it was top 25. Okay, we're in the playoff. Like, we have a chance. And they're not going to lose that much money playing only 9 games. If you want to play more and make more money, win. Recruit and win. I think that's another way to go about it.
Another thing you get with those, you talk about the bowl money and revenues and all that. If you do 8, you keep your New Year's 6. Those are your playoff games, and then you add a 7th, which is the national championship, and you rotate that thing around the country.
The Barstool Sports Bowl.
The Barstool National Championship. Let's get it going. Go, Prez, go.
Steve, I like that idea. The only thing is, hypothetically speaking, let's say you get a Sun Belt team who comes out of nowhere and wins their conference, but they're not ranked in the top 25. Do they deserve into the national championship bracket, or are they only able to get into the other bracket? Because conference, they keep saying conference championships mean something, but as of right now, I haven't really seen it yet.
I mean, once you raise my pay for these shows, I'll put more work into thinking about that. But once you get that Bang Energy, well, I gave up Bang Energy drink, so you don't have to get that sponsorship no more. I'll go back to coffee. Give me a coffee sponsorship, and I'll think about it.
What about
I'll try to call it Black Rifle.
What about playing games? Let's say we come up, we're in a scenario where, such and such team wins, their conference champion. There's questions of, well, let the little guys go against each other. I mean, hate to say it, but you need
That's what basketball does, right?
Yes, yes. It's there. There's so many options, but there's such a myopic view of this that and it's driven by money. But you got to open this up for the health of the sport. Who knows what happens with this whole. I mean, there's a whole. I guess my understanding is there's a chain of other lawsuits and things to where it's going to end up players are going to be unionized or something else. I mean, who knows where this thing goes? Stay out in front of it. Create a system that works for players. Make sure that you have a system that works for for the sport, because that's what matters. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what matters. You want to have a great product. It has to be changed because people are falling out of love with this whole thing. I mean, there's more hate than anything about one of about the pinnacle of college football. Big time college football right now. People hate it. Why? Because it's all wrong. And it's so simple. It's so simple to fix. And people will say, no, it's not that simple. Yes, it is. It's just that people have to put money and ego aside and really take a good hard look at this thing.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on fixing the playoffs?
As long as Clemson keeps making it, it's all that matters.
Yep, that's the new sun.
Now that Lovie Smith is gone, we're okay.
And did he take his beard with him?
He shaved that off this year.
Did he?
Before the year started, because he went to Arizona. He has a house in Arizona. He went there right before the pandemic, so then he was stuck there. So he was like, it's hot here. I have to shave it off.
That's why.
That's why.
You trace the losses back to that right there.
Like Samson got his hair cut. The beard went, and all the power went.
Hey, Bielema looks excited to be there. Brad Underwood, the basketball coach for U of I, called him and told the reporters, talking to him, it feels like he actually wants to be here. So he took a shot at Lovie. Underwood took a shot at Lovie, like, this guy wants to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Their facilities are getting done. They showed a tour of them. They look pretty nice. So hopefully, we'll see.
If y'all weren't going to hire Jeff Monken, y'all couldn't have done better than Brett Bielema for many reasons.
He wasn't even on my radar. I said Monken, Sean Lewis, and then Coach Lewis for Kent State. He's from Illinois.
Yeah.
I didn't watch a lot of action this year.
He played and he coached at Eastern with Babers. He was his OC at Syracuse.
You love some Babers, don't you?
Well, I was just thinking of Illinois ties. Like Monken has Illinois ties. Sean Lewis is from here, some Illinois ties. I was praying to the Lord above that Gus would just put money aside and come, but I think he's going to be Nick Saban's OC when Sarkisian goes to Auburn. Watch.
That would be excellent. I don't think Malzahn's going to coach.
He might go to Arizona.
Ugh.
I think he'll take some time away.
That's what I'm saying. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
That or go to be an OC somewhere.
Bielema as OC at Illinois. Let's go. Let's give me the good both worlds here.
No, you need to get you a guy that'll get in the eye. And
He's not. He's not going back to that.
what's he? Is he going to try to be spread like everybody else?
He wants to be he wants to run the ball, but he wants to like what Clemson does.
So he's going to do it from the shotgun at Illinois. Hope y'all lose every game.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. Brett Bielema, he should know better.
Mm-hmm.
He should know better.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get to our last segment here and
Extremely hot water.
talk about bowl games.
I'm getting tickets as we speak.
Talking about bowl games.
For his what?
He's part of that contract for Illinois fans. You get into no, I'm not getting into it. I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Let's go to that.
That's that premium pass there, Coach. We're not
That's the group Texas Illinois fans are a part of that I probably should.
Just like that, the Armchair Coaching Podcast is brought to an end.
So,
Give you
our
the-
bowl matchups. I mean, part of the conversation that we had earlier is I honestly, there's something has to change about the way the bowls are done. But Bennett did make a good argument that if we changed it, there would be times where we would not get certain matchups that we actually enjoy watching. And I mean, it's hard to argue the Army West Virginia. That seems like a very interesting matchup right there. This is to me for Army. This is that prove it game. Like we talk about Army all the time, and a lot of us like triple option wing T guys. We like to say, hey, you run an offense like this, you can take a group of players who might not have as much talent, and you can beat the big boys and play with the big boys. Now, West Virginia, they're a Power 5 school, but they're not the best Power 5 school. But if you don't beat West Virginia, then you're proving a lot of the naysayers correct. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those guys would say triple option sucks. Even though Army did beat Houston by like 70 points a couple of years ago. That was an awesome game. But other than the Army West Virginia game, I mean, you can talk about that one, but are there any other matchups that you guys are looking forward to? And I'm going to go ahead and steal one because I know one of you is going to say it. Liberty and Coastal Carolina. That one, it should have happened in the regular season, but it didn't. We ended up getting a pretty darn good BYU Coastal Carolina game. I don't know if I don't agree that this is the game that Coastal Carolina deserves after the season that they've had. I think they should have had a shot at a big boy. But I still think this is a very intriguing matchup because I think they're about the same in talent-wise. And, one is, spread them and shred them, and the other is triple and slow it down. It's going to be very interesting. It's a kind of a contrast of styles. Yes, I know they're both in shotgun, but there's a contrast of styles here. So that's the game I'm looking for. What other games, since a lot of them are being canceled apparently, what are some other matchups that we're looking at that you guys are interested in watching?
Army West Virginia. I called it. I said it before the podcast started. Sheffer stole my thunder. Army West Virginia.
Cincinnati plays Georgia, so let's see if Cincinnati deserves to be in the conversation. And then you got Florida and Oklahoma. I think that could be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas
If
A&M,
Cincinnati
North
beats
Carolina.
Georgia, they'll kick them out of the SEC.
And then Texas A&M, if they weren't so pissed off, it might be a good one against North Carolina. North Carolina's pretty good. Those are some good ones.
And now that I have no games to pick from because Steve has listed them all. No, there's one he forgot. And I think it's very important. And I think it's important for both programs. And I'm looking forward to it. Indiana's on a mission. I don't know how many of you follow Coach Allen. His whole thing is blinders and earmuffs. And they are staying on, they're staying with the mission, staying, with the vision. They have Ole Miss. That's two programs that are trying to do big things, and I think that's a very intriguing matchup. I think Indiana's got to be mad because you're playing on the second in an Outback Bowl. I don't think they deserve that. I think they're better than that, but it's a prove it. It definitely is a prove it game for both of those. The SEC, are they going to have a team get beat by a Big Ten team? We'll see. I mean, that's not what the best the SEC has to offer, but Indiana has to go and we'll see. I think Indiana pulls this one out, and I think it's a great statement for them and for the conference, because right now I don't know if the Big Ten Conference has too much to hoop and holler about whenever you see what kind of situation they got in. Hoosier born. Been a long time since Indiana football has been relevant, if it ever has been. It's always in the shadow of the team that plays in Assembly Hall. But the bottom line is, I think that's an intriguing matchup. But Indiana might be the one shining moment as far as football goes here with bowls for the Big Ten. It doesn't look good to me for the conference. That might be the one opportunity they have to have a team show up and do something great. Because I still don't feel good about Northwestern in that matchup. I mean, you take Gus out of the equation, I still say that they're probably better than Northwestern.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other final thoughts before we shut this one down for the night?
Yeah.
What are the seven? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I made a joke earlier about the whole thing of people here in the state in which I live. There's a curfew here, and it's 10 o'clock, and that's probably going to be a good thing because there might be some bad things happen after that Ohio State Clemson game. But I'm the biggest Buckeye homer in the world, and I tell you what, it was really tough to come on here and, like I say, friends, these are the facts. Bottom line is that I am intrigued by, the little things inside of some of these matchups, and we've already kind of talked about, who we think is going to win, but I think that's the beauty of college football. Even in a loss, you're seeing a chess game going on, and I think that's why football, even at the college level, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest sport on the face of the earth. I just don't understand why, people like to take digs at it. It's just awesome. I mean, that's the beauty of it. We can talk about, we have tonight. We talked about the whole fact of who we think is going to win on paper and what's probably going to happen. And it's awesome to be able to, talk about things. And, I'm just glad to be back with you guys. You guys are fun. I spend my time behind the scenes editing. It's good to actually see you guys' faces, even if you're thousands of miles away. So much love to you guys.
Is it good to see Coach Meyer's face?
I loved it. It actually, it made me chuckle throughout the evening because, we're about to go back to that. So I'm just getting prepared, man. I'm just getting prepared.
I'll leave y'all with a riddle. What are the 7 most important letters in the English alphabet? Clemson. Bielema's dead to me now. That's all I got.
Mm. Coach Steve, any final thoughts?
Hopefully Illinois football gets back on the map.
Hopefully not.
Hey, it's just speculation, power spread run. All he said was he's going to adapt because the game is now sideline to sideline.
Well, it was sideline to sideline. He was at Wisconsin winning 10 games a year, too. Didn't matter.
I don't know why Illinois is so... I don't know why... I mean, come on, Steve. Why you got to be so angry? Your fans had plenty to look at last year. The back of guys when they were running to score touchdowns on the other end of the field. Wasn't that entertaining to you?
And watching Lovey stand there and do nothing, like, oh, they scored. Great. least we have a guy that's going to say what he wants and how he wants and do what he wants to do.
Well,
And he's getting paid more than Lovey. That's even more funny. And they increased his budget. That's more funny.
so you're paying more for more of the same. Awesome.
No, I think
What it sounds like to me.
What?
Lovey had no connect with Illinois high school coaches.
No.
Within an hour of him calling or getting hired, he was calling our union or the Illinois High School Association.
Ain't wasn't nobody on the other end of that phone. He did that for Twitter so they could video him talking to somebody.
I saw it on Zoom.
He's been too busy talking to the media recently.
Yeah.
I mean, he's back in the I wouldn't call it a spotlight. I don't know, what would you call that? A nightlight? Because Illinois is not relevant yet, and I don't think they're ever going to be. Again, paying more money to a guy who's going to give you more of the same. That's a bad spot. That's a great job for Bielema to get back into the head coach's office, but
If he can
I
get
don't
them
know.
to a bowl game in the next 2 years, that's success.
I think so.
I'll give you that.
I think so. I think he's going to bring energy and toughness. Lovey didn't have that. I think that he's going to bring more toughness and energy because I saw Illinois get pumped up they're losing by 30 and they tackle and they're pumping their chest and Lovey's letting it happen. He would pull them by the face mask and be like, "What the hell are you doing? We're losing by 30 and you're doing this." Lovey's an NFL coach. He thinks it should be played through and it's not. You got college kids and this kid, he'll know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. All right, gentlemen.
Doesn't sound like it. Not if he's not going to be doing it with fullbacks and tight ends. Anyways.
We will talk some Illinois football because I think the next set of teams that we're going to talk about is going to be the Big Ten. We're going to take a break from the SEC for a little while and talk a little bit of Big Ten football. We'll decide who we talk about first. Probably not that team up north yet, but
Why not?
Eventually we will. I mean, we got to. We've got to get through all of them, but I'm a little tired of Michigan right now, but I'm a little tired of Texas too. I'm thinking about jumping ship.
Can we replace Michigan and Clemson? Can we do that yet? Can we just go ahead and play the game instead of playing
Don't
against
do that
Clemson?
to Illinois. Don't be doing that. It already hurts enough.
I mean, seriously, can we just play? That would be a better game for us than what's about to happen. Did I already mention that a couple of times?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. All right, guys. This has been the Armchair Coaching Podcast, and this is Coach Sheffer signing off.